up in Asia, growing up in Southeast Asia, there are a lot of struggles, there are a lot of challenges with, trying to be a death metal band in the region. And I'm curious if you experienced something similar with Gutslit as you guys were recording albums and trying to find shows and trying to book tours and things like that.
Oh yes, Adrian, it was actually very difficult, man. Because what used to happen is that India did have its metal. Like I'm not gonna lie. So we have bands since 1990s who have been there, who have been putting out music videos and stuff like that, and they have been pretty good all these years. So what used to happen with especially Gutset is that it was something like slam and brutal death metal was something that it hadn't reached that many of even the metal audience that much in India back then. So we used to become too extreme for certain bands or certain gigs that used to happen around, and we used to become just because we were incorporating slam. Certain gigs or organizers would not let us play because it wouldn't fit their bill of old school or extreme metal or grindcore music. So it has been a kind of difficult, but over the years I guess we've kept doing what we've liked, and people have appreciated it and they have started appreciating what we do. So it has been one hell of an eventful journey, I would say.
And that's something I've brought up on the podcast quite recently, which is that it can be difficult if you're part of a scene but not fitting in musically, because scenes tend to, in terms of who gets booked or who gets signed to a label, people tend to gravitate towards a specific style or a few styles. And if you don't fit in with that, it can be hard to find an audience locally. It can be hard to get shows booked, to find, or even if you want to book your own shows, to find like-minded people to play with. I mean, the interesting thing about slam and grindcore is that, there's this global community of slam fans where, they just love the style so much that it doesn't matter, like, where the band is from. Like, if you're from Russia, if you're from New Zealand, or if you're from, Florida, if there's a new slam band, they'll jump on it and they'll talk about it on the message boards or on Reddit or what have you. I mean, were you finding that you were getting more fans from overseas than locally in India?
That's actually a very good point that you've put up. So you know what? So the struggles which we had all over the years to kind of book shows and be there playing music, that struggle kind of was the thing that kind of get us into the mentality that now it's I think time for us to be a part of this whole global community rather than getting stuck to this very small community in India. And that was actually it was something that triggered us back in 2012 itself, that yes, we have to target for something big which is not in India, because Indian Indian scene was still developing, and we were doing something I think much ahead of the time back then. So I think that idea kind of helped us. But slam was something that was still not appreciated in India that much back then. There were definitely extreme metal shows and properties that were kind of only promoting extreme metal, like stuff like grindcore, noise grind, some really extreme brutal gold grind music which was happening in Bangalore back then. And it was a big scene. I'm not gonna lie. There were some really crazy bands that which came out from there. But it kind of, for them also, we did not fit in the bill because they would cater to somebody like an old school band more to fit in the bill than have somebody like a slam playing it.
Yeah. You mentioned the scene in India goes back to the 90s. The scene in Asia started in earnest around the same time as well. And from what I know of the scene, especially around Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, there were a few bands that were doing stuff in the 80s. But the scene really kicked off, I guess, around 1991 or so, when Sepultura toured Indonesia. And that was a really big deal. They were one of the first, internationally known bands, and one of the first, death metal bands or death thrash bands to actually play this region. And if you look at a lot of the bands that came out of, especially Malaysia at the time, they all kind of sounded like Sepultura, starting 91, 92.
I totally can imagine that.
Yeah. Was there a similar event in India that sparked the metal scene growing?
Yes, actually, it was Deep Purple for India. So I think, if I'm not wrong, Deep Purple was the first actual proper band to have come and played in India for the first time. So there was like a whole boom of heavy metal since then. But there have been jazz and rock and roll bands since the early '80s, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. When we were speaking about Gutslit's development, and we were talking about how social media and the internet really helped bands find an audience worldwide, if not necessarily locally. Well, one of the things that I think is important is that as technology and home recording technology got better and also cheaper, it became easier for people who had a vision or who had like a specific style in mind to make music without having to find like-minded people. Do you know what I mean? I mean, my struggles in high school when I was trying to start a band is that you may have a guitarist who is a punk rock guy, and a bassist who's into like Pink Floyd, and a drummer who likes black metal. Do you know what I mean? And somehow like four people who come from different musical backgrounds have to make compromises with each other to make music. And now like anybody who's getting into like whatever music they want to make, black metal, brutal death metal, whatever, can record on their own, can program the drums on their own, and even release on their own through Bandcamp and things like that. Are you seeing a lot of like solo projects or bedroom projects coming out of India recently?
Actually, there have been some. There have been some actually since some time. Actually, if you ask me, there have been. If I actually listen to a lot of black metal as well. So very good friends of ours from Hyderabad, Shock Therapy. So their vocalist, whose name is Rahul Das, he has this two solo DSBM and Vedic black metal projects that he which were bedroom projects. Then everybody knows of the most famous ones called as Amuk Symphony, which is actually a bedroom project as well. And there have been a lot of bedroom projects that have been coming out in the recent times. Like Spasmodia is one of them, and Minerva Conduct was also a bedroom project. So it was Minerva Conduct was basically Pratik's project, where he had a couple of other musicians join him later to form a band and start playing live as well. But it started off as a bedroom project. So what you said was right, that internet and all these new music texts which people started using came in a lot of handy, and it kind of did bloom a lot of musicians, and it did grow a scene a lot more.
You mentioned Bangalore has a lot of gore grind bands. Are there specific scenes or specific scenes attached to different cities around India?
So basically, if you like, everybody knows India is actually a very vast country. So it is only fair to for their own regions to have their own smaller metal scenes and communities where they hold up shows. And but Bangalore and India, I mean Bangalore and Mumbai are some of like most two of them which have multiple organizers doing multiple metal shows at the same time. So yeah, Bangalore has its scene. So it has its own doom metal, old school metal scene which goes around. Then it has its own underground metal scene, which is the undergrind, which is the property is called as undergrind, and they have all grindcore, noise grind, and stuff. Then they have this regular metal shows which have progressive metal bands, and which has deathcore bands, and the more commercial stuff happening around. So it is like Bangalore is one of those cities which has that. Unfortunately or fortunately, I mean, it works either ways.
As you guys have been touring recently, are you finding that there are certain cities that have larger death metal scenes?
So basically, in India, the thing is like death metal itself as a genre is kind of growing a lot. So the good thing is that every city has its own death metal outfit and a band that has been going on, and which is creating name for themselves, which is a good scene now. And like I'm pretty proud to say that. I mean, they're not just one band, but they're like more than a couple of bands who are like approaching this genre of music as their, preference of playing.
one of the sad things in Southeast Asia is we actually have a lot of metal fans. As in people who listen to metal, and maybe they'll go see an overseas band, and or order stuff off the internet, or order stuff off of Bandcamp, or stream stuff off of Spotify, but they don't really support our local scene. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I think locally, why, like for example, why a Malaysian metalhead may not go to like a local death metal fest, or check out local bands playing or touring through Malaysia. I'm curious if you see something similar happening in India.
Fortunately, that's not the case in India. I mean, because why I'm saying that is we have our own festivals that are happening, which are like kind of only inclined towards extreme metal music. So Bangalore Open Air, again, there's a festival that happens in Bangalore, and they have tie-ups with Wacken. So there are international plus local artists playing there, and there is a decent crowd of 4,000, 4,500 people, which is good enough for an extreme metal concert in India. And the local scene, if you ask me, so the first album launch show that we did for the Carnal tour, we started off with Mumbai, which is our own city, and there were like good 450 people at the venue. So 450 people at a venue is a good scene. So
Yeah.
we are not like some international band, doing things.
That's amazing.
We are pretty local for them. It's like we are just a call or a message away from them. We live in the same city.
Yeah.
So, and it is the same for every show that we played at. So even at Bangalore, which we played at like just a couple of days ago, it was a packed venue. I mean, packed venue, some violent moshes, people stage diving, things that you don't get to see that often anymore unless there is some international artist playing. But fortunately, the scene is still alive, and definitely the venues and the shows have reduced as per how they were in 2012 to 2016. But the flame is still there.
And in terms of the reduced crowds, is that largely because of COVID and things that have happened since then, or are there other reasons?
I mean, it's not just the COVID or anything. It's just that, I would say that it's kind of like a trend as well. Like, back then what used to happen was we, like how Gurdeep mentioned, that we had our college festivals who were supporting rock and metal events. So that was one of the main reasons that, a lot of kids were getting influenced to this kind of music, and they were getting kind of, they could see it more and, kind of experience it more. So, but later over the years, what had happened was like these same bands which were like playing were like replaced by, certain big DJs, or like, by EDM artists who were like becoming raving around. And again, the social media played a big role in them because they see the numbers more than anything. And now the thing again has changed, and now they have gotten driven towards the rappers and the hip hop scene more, which is the Indian scene has been going crazy over it. And they've been touching, bigger milestones day by day.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, I think this year, or maybe it was last year, I can't remember, but, I celebrated my 30th anniversary as a metalhead. And, over the years, I've seen people come and go, and it does seem like the life cycle of a metal fan, especially an extreme metal fan, or an underground metal fan, I should say, is around 8 years, roughly the period from high school to college. And of course, girlfriends become wives and jobs become careers, and people tend to drop off as they have families and more responsibilities and things like that.
Oh yeah.
So it's understandable. But I also think there's an aspect.
But one good thing, Adrian, is that, like you mentioned, COVID in between. So there was like this whole, limited circuit of people and friends who used to attend shows back then. But what has happened but during these 3 years of COVID is now I've started seeing newer face, and not just a couple of them, a lot of them, which is a very good sign if you ask me. I mean, now slowly and steadily the things are changing. Like people are kind of, gravitating towards more, live music being played rather than some record being played behind, and, people just singing on top of it. So I think now kids of these days have started appreciating that factor again. So I think it's a good scene.
That's great, man. That's great that this scene is being rejuvenated. I'm curious if you'd be able to characterize the Indian scene. I was speaking to a band from France, and he mentioned some of the other bands in his town, and they were all kind of progressive or kind of avant-garde. Very unique bands, and it struck me that there were a number of bands like that, all coming from the same town. And the reason why that stood out to me was because in Malaysia, we have a lot of worship bands. Do you know what I mean? Like we have a lot of bands that are
I
named
understand. I
after,
understand.
yeah, yeah, like named after a Carcass song, and all their songs sound like Carcass, or named after, I don't know, like an Entombed song, and all their songs sound like Entombed. Like we have a lot of those kind of bands, and that's like I feel like that's part of our character as Malaysians. Like, we don't have a lot of progressive bands. We don't have a lot of like avant-garde or those kind of bands. Like we really want like to just sound like one thing. And to the extent that like when a few band members want to do something different, they'll just form a new band. Like they won't change their style, they won't evolve, they'll just start a new project. I don't know, how do you feel about the mentality of like the Indian scene? Do you feel like they're open to progression and to evolution and things like that?
So, frankly speaking, bro, so the thing is that India has its own classical music, which is kind of very known, and it's in like every Indian's blood. So, their Indian classical music is all about progressions. So, progressive music is something that is always has been a part of the Indian scene. Let it be metal, let it be Bollywood, or let it be anything. So, so the thing is that musicians over here, they kind of evolve, like how I said, we evolved over the years, and it was not just the music that evolved, it was definitely us which made the music to evolve, right? So it goes hand in hand. Like a person's personal maturity and the maturity of the music what he's making now over the years is different because he's a different person now. So it's just the same thing. So in India, I wouldn't say that progressive music has been, it's been there in everything that they play. Even if a band is playing old school death metal music, they will have some progressive elements, which is naturally there in it. And we don't find it, we don't call it progressive, it's just there because that's how certain rhythms work for us. So I don't know if it's the kind of, making some sense musically, but that's the truth. But if I would still say that it's not it's like, I wouldn't say that there has been some one scene which has been completely dominating the whole Indian mentality of music. No, I wouldn't say that. We have always had our bands which have done excellent work in their own genres of music. So let it be black metal, let it be sludge, let it be death metal, let it be gold grind, anything. We have India has always had bands who have done and who have outdone themselves in those specific genres. So I would never say that it was dominated by a certain genre or like a certain wave of music as such. Yes, of course, if it's like kids getting inspired by things. So yeah, Lamb of God, Meshuga, they created a lot of bands which wanted to sound like that. But those same bands, luckily over the years, got out of that phase and started creating their own, found their own sound, found their own way of music, and now they are doing some really good things.
That's great, man. The strange thing, and maybe the sad thing about this interview, is that Gutslit was actually sent to me by I think he's based in Europe. Kabar PR? I'm not sure where he's based.
I am really sorry, but I really don't think I know him personally.
Okay. Well, whoever the PR company is who sent me is somebody from outside of Asia. And there have been a number of other Indian death metal bands that have been sent to me, like Demonstealer and Godless, again sent from, outside of Asia, from the US or Europe or, wherever the promotional company or the record company was based. And it's strange to me just because like, technically we're much closer to each other than we are to the rest of the world. Do you know what I mean? But there's very little community.
That's a very fair point that you put out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the thing is that Asia, no matter how big we are, we don't have enough of PR companies which have been doing some really good things. And there has been transitioning opportunities, of course, there, but it's unfortunately for us, Cornal has stopped working with Indian bands and he's like kind of focusing on international bands more. So we need somebody who has that kind of a pull. So unfortunately, Europe, USA, and Canada are the only places where that pull or that gravitation is happening for bands. So I totally understand that we should be on a closer level and having some of our internal Asian stuff going on as well. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean, do you know why Transcending stopped promoting Indian bands? Because most of the stuff I see from him is basically he releases a lot of stuff from Sweden, which I can't blame him for because since I was like 15 years old, I've been obsessed with Sweden as well. So, I'm also guilty of that.
No. The thing is, Well, I would completely, kind of agree to what why he made that decision. So basically, he was signing a lot of bands at that time, and it was just getting way too difficult for him to, kind of manage it by himself. So because I remember just with the international releases as well, I was putting out probably 4 releases a month, which is kind of bonkers. I mean, it's crazy,
Yeah.
just the amount of work and the efforts that he put in for all of that and the whole PR, which is his strongest point. That one of the reasons that Transcending actually is doing so well is with his PR. His PR is stupid. The contacts that he has gotten over the years, like kind of relationships that he has built over the years with some of the musicians and writers from the world around the world is something extraordinary. So the thing is, like, I totally agree to his decision because it was just getting very difficult and the number of bands was increasing. So he would rather, kind of have the bands that he really wanted to work with and now has the opportunity to be on the roster and kind of focus on them completely and give justice to what they totally deserve. Which was actually a very fair point on my part.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned Godless. I mentioned Demonstealer. I may reach out to the guy from Demonstealer to do an interview. Who would you say the big bands that everyone should know about from India are?
Well, like how you mentioned Demon Slayer right now, he is probably one of the guys who has always been there and always kind of had drawn attention towards the Indian metal scene. He has helped us also grow over the years and he's always guided us to do things. And we always, kind of look at him as a big brother who would be there to guide us and, give advice when we need the most. So definitely Sahil, Demon Slayer and his other project, Demonic Resurrection, which was his actual project, which is a crazy band. There is Godless, like which you mentioned. Then there is Third Sovereign, which is from the northeastern region of India. They have been around for a long time and they've been, churning out some really good old school death metal. So Third Sovereign is something that you got to check out. Then if you ask me, there is Inner Sanctum that you can check out. They kind of just played and opened for Vader, Hate, and Tidy Seas right now in India. Again, a pretty cool band.
That's awesome.
And there is Moral Collapse that you should check out. So it's again a solo project, but he's been getting some crazy musicians from around the world to play on his albums, and he's been creating some crazy music with some avant-garde technical death metal. Pretty kick-ass.
Very cool. I'll check out all those bands. Thank you so much, Adi.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It was actually lovely talking to you, man.